A pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, that the next person I'm going to introduce to you, you all know, he was the first one who reacted so quickly, much quicker than the president or anybody else in the United States, to a disaster, and he's here really helping Israel. Let's give the Honorable Edwin Edwards, Governor of the state of Louisiana, a nice big hand.
Please be seated. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Please be seated. Mr. Ambassador, I am impressed by your figures of people coming into Israel. I can't do anything about helping them with jobs or housing, but I know a lot about registering them to vote. And for a couple of dollars a head, I'll go over there and start a voter registration drive. And whatever party you want, doesn't make any difference to me. I'm fluid. I visited Jerome when he was in the hospital. It was about 6 months before he ran for assessor. And he was getting well enough to where he was getting ornery again. And Brad was in there when I walked in, and they were arguing. I know you don't believe this. They were arguing about something to do with a building that they had in Baton Rouge, about what to do with it. And finally, Brad left, and Jerome shook his head. And I said to him, I said, "You really think that Abraham would have sacrificed Isaac?" "He would have if his name was Brad." I'm here, of course, for a number of reasons. First, it's very good to be in a non-controversial setting. So much of what I do and say and am involved in is a controversy of some kind. I used to tell people when I was running a year ago at this time, ask why at my age and with my record in service, that I wanted to run for governor again, and I'd tell them, well, I want to be of service. I feel this is my role in life, or I'd find some kind of a political response to give them. But the truth of the matter is, now that the election is over with, and in 1954, as a young lawyer in my hometown of Crowley, I was elected to the Crowley City Council and pretty much ran the city for 8 years. And so people treated me, at least to my face, with respect and a degree of consideration. And then in 1963, I went to the state senate and widened a degree of respect and attention. And then in 1965, I went to Congress. And then in 1972, I was elected governor and spent 8 years in the mansion with chauffeurs and airplanes and helicopters and state police and National Guard at my disposal, and the opportunity to really visit with presidents and major figures around the world. And then in 1980, I had to get out the governor's office because of a constitutional prohibition against succeeding myself. But everybody thought that I had engineered for Dave Treen to get elected so that I would have a sense to be elected 4 years later. And so they treated me as though I was governor for 4 years, anticipating my return. And indeed, in 1983, I was reelected. And for 4 more years, I was in the mansion and enjoying life with all the perks that go along with being governor. And then, of course, in 1987, I went through that unfortunate debacle. And for the first time in my life, all of a sudden, I was a has-been politician with no future and no money and very little going for me. And I finally realized for the first time that people have a hard time finding a place to park. And that if you want to see a doctor, you're supposed to call and make an appointment. And about 2 weeks after I got out of the governor's office, the crowning blow came. I walked into my barber shop, and the barber looked at me and said, "Listen, if you want to get a haircut, you have to call for an appointment." And I decided it's just no fun living like an ordinary person. And so I decided to do the only thing that I can do, and that is run for governor again, and it's in that vein that I'm here tonight. I'm also very much aware of the strong, effective support that I got from the Jewish community, not only here in New Orleans, but throughout Louisiana and indeed throughout America. I can recall all of a sudden during the campaign getting a series of checks from the Philadelphia area. and we were somewhat mystified by that until by coincidence we found out that there was a very small article, not larger than this, in the Philadelphia newspaper talking about Edwin Edwards being in a runoff against David Duke, former Ku Klux Klan member and Nazi sympathizer. And that small article had generated no less than 100 people in the area who read it to send contributions, for which I was very, very much appreciative. I'm also here because I know that Israel is America's friend in that part of the world, and I know that the security and well-being of my country is in large measure tied to the security and well-being of Israel. And I'm very pleased to be the recipient of the award which you will be given to the recipient tonight. It was given to me, I think, in around 1978 or 79, I forget the year. And I have had a long position of support for Israel, both as a member of Congress and as a governor, because I know of the relationship between that great democracy and our democracy, and believe that that's in our national interest. I also know that 3,000 years ago, prophets inspired by God himself told us that one day the desert would bloom again and the dispersed Jews around the world would come home and form a new nation that would thrive and survive. So I'm absolutely, positively convinced that any bond that is sold by the country of Israel is going to be redeemed in time, because we have it on no less than the biblical authority of the prophets of old. And then the last reason that I'm here is because of my friendship for Brad and Susan. It, of course, is a spinoff from my relationship with Jerome. We go back 20 years ago when I first ran for governor and met him here in New Orleans. He was a longtime friend and supporter. I had the privilege of placing him on the mineral board for 8 years, where he served with distinction. And of course, through the years, I got to know his children and ultimately Susan, although not as well as I knew Brad. On the back of this program is a list of the various things that they have been involved in and what they have contributed to and how much they have been involved in charitable and civic affairs and how much they've given of themselves and their resources for the organizations and causes listed thereon, and I will not repeat it. I came tonight as governor of this state to express our official gratitude to the Jewish community and to the one you honor tonight. And I'm very pleased to do that as my friend and as a supporter and as one who is a contributing citizen to the business affairs of New Orleans and the state of Louisiana. None of us in our lives will probably ever be divinely designated as David to pick up a smooth pebble and kill a giant as he was. Few of us will ever have the gift of prophecy that the prophets of old had. None of us will ever be designated as Abraham was to be the father of two great nations. We will not even be able to fill an almost unidentified role that Ruth filled in the Old Testament, or Esther, or some of the women of the biblical age. But everybody living has something that he can give of himself or herself to make life better for other people. And when we do that, whether it is to help the elderly lady down the street, or the Boy Scout troop, or your church, or your synagogue, or whether it is to help the homeless, or whether it's to give a job to a person who is looking for a job and can't find work, or whether it's simply to hold out the hand of friendship in times of disaster, every one of us have an opportunity as we go through life to make life a little bit better for maybe one, maybe two, maybe 10, maybe 100, maybe 1,000 people. In most instances, those who benefit from our generosity never know our faces or our personalities or our names. The people that will be helped by your presence here tonight and the purchase of these bonds, and by Brad and Susan's efforts, those that will be flooding into Israel in the decade to come, will know nothing about this meeting here tonight. And if they move into some comfortable apartment and find a secure place to live after years of living in a communist country, they won't see a sign on the door or your name on the deed. They won't know who you were or where you were on this night, but they will benefit from the fact that you were here. And that's what makes this all so great, because those of us who can, when we have an opportunity to make things better for other people, not looking for any kind of reward or return or recognition, but simply because it's the humanity in all of us, that affords us an opportunity to rise to the God that is in all of us, that part of us which responds to that part of our Creator who made us as we are. What Brad and Susan have done and what you have done tonight to make things just a little bit better in Israel for people who are desperate and anxious to start over their new lives, to make it more comfortable and easy for them, is something that you won't get any letter of thanks from them. You'll not be invited to their homes for lunch. They won't vote for you and they won't know who you are. But you know who you are. And they know that somebody in America cared enough to make it easy for them. And that's why I'm here. Thank you.